Hi, Anthony from DigiOrth. I gave a presentation recently to some public sector podiatrists around the high-risk foot and the mechanics and the importance of biomechanics in managing a high-risk foot. And we talked about 5 important tests that we should include in our diabetes assessments. I don't know about you, but when I was back at university, we didn't really go much into mechanics with regards to diabetes. We talked about, whether the toes are clawed, whether there are pressure areas, but I think understanding the mechanics behind diabetes and how the tissues change and how those changes therefore affect that person's ability to function properly are really important. So the first test that I would always do when I come to see a client with diabetes will be supination resistance. Seeing how resistant that person is to resupination gives us an indication as to how much stress some of the soft tissues will be under during their normal walking. The second test that I would do would be just checking the fat pad underneath the heels and the forefoot. How mobile is that fat pad? How thick is the fat pad? Is it hiding any bony prominences? Sometimes a foot that looks quite luxurious in the fat pad area can actually go on to have a lot of problems there when a load is applied to it. So pressing aggressively to that fat pad to see if you can identify any plantar pressure areas is really important. Test number 3 for me would always be the subtalar location, or the subtalar axis location, I should say. This will give you a much better idea as to how much pronation moment versus supination is being generated during gait. Now we know that the soft tissues with diabetes tend to stiffen because of glycosylation. So what we tend to find is that as people develop through diabetes, the foot becomes more and more a rigid model. So the rotation about that subtalar joint axis is critical for generating pronation and supination moments, which in the wrong situation can increase load under certain areas and increase tissue stress as well. So subtalar axis location is really important to identify. The next test that I would always do would be the windlass test. Checking to see whether there's any functional restriction in the first MTPJ is important, because when you think about it, if we have a functional restriction at that joint, that's going to increase the tension on the plantar fascia. Craig Payne did a study years ago on the plantar fascia function in people with Charcot's. Now, what he found is that everyone with Charcot collapse had either a ruptured plantar fascia or one that wasn't functioning properly. So this says to us the importance of checking that plantar fascia function. The next test that I would usually do is just checking to see how strong the anterior muscles are. We know when people have diabetes, and as we get older as well, the strength in the anterior shin muscles tend to deteriorate, as do the intrinsic muscles. Now, those anterior muscles are anti-gravity muscles that slow down the rate of plantar flexion of the foot. So the weaker they are, the stronger the plantar flexion, the stronger the ground reaction forces will be under the forefoot. And that, in combination with pressure areas, will tend to increase the likelihood of ulceration. So these are just some of the mechanical tests I think we should all be doing when we're seeing clients with diabetes. This way we can make sure that people are getting the best assessment possible, and matching the mechanical issues with the neurovascular issues gives us a much clearer picture as to how much risk that client will be under for developing foot complications with diabetes. Hope you enjoyed the video. Stay tuned, there's more to come. Take care.